Te kaumarua mai te rua almost 12 minutes after 2 o'clock here with Tautoko FM. Hey, proud to have our guests in the studio this afternoon. Our friend, of course, pretty well known fellow in the north, Bryce Smith, coming here. It's whanau, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Cyril. Ka nui te mihi kia koutou I whakarongo mai ngā kōrero I tēnei rā, nō reira ka nui te mihi kia koutou.
And we've got a special guest in the studio all the way from America, Joe Eggender. Tēnā koe, Joe.
Thanks for having me, I appreciate it.
Yeah, kia ora, Joe. Tell us about why you're here in Aotaeroa.
Sure. So we're doing a 4-part doco covering a broad spectrum of emerging biotechnologies, gene editing, gene sequencing in a variety of fields, medical field, conservation, which brings us here, which I'll get into, food, sustainability, the future, aging, enhancement, all sorts of things. What brought us to New Zealand is a scientist we're following in Boston named Kevin Esvelt. He discovered a technology called the gene drive, which is the ability to genetic engineer an organism and then have that organism pass it along and along. And the reason he's in New Zealand is because they're considering using this technology for predator-free New Zealand 2050. And so what we're doing is going around and hearing people's perspective on the technology and what they think. And we've already been to 2 huis, one in Rotorua and one in Auckland, and that's where we met Bryce. And Bryce invited us up here to the Northland, and so we're happy to be up here and looking forward to hearing people's thoughts on this technology.
Yeah, kia ora, so is this technology being used presently in America, or is it?
No, it's still being developed. And Kevin is one of the scientists developing it. It's being considered in other places for malaria in Africa, as an example. And Kevin is working on it to potentially use to eradicate Lyme disease in New England, which is a big problem. And mice carry around the Lyme disease they get from ticks.
Okay, so you're talking about various groups here in Aotaeroa?
We are, yes. We're trying to get from what we've learned from Bryce. There's a lot of different opinions and thoughts on this that have to do with the knowledge, and we're learning as we go. And Bryce has been nice enough to take us around, and we'll be traveling around again tomorrow as well, and meeting different elders and discussing everybody's thoughts on it.
So will you be going to other countries as well?
We will. We will be in China, Africa. We've been to Italy and London, and England, and obviously the States.
Tēnā koe, thank you for your time.
Thanks, I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing you guys discuss this.
Yeah, kia ora. There you go, whānau Manuhiri from America, and of course they're filming at the moment here at the station. We're streaming live as well on our Facebook. Ngā mihi tēnei kia koe Bryce, tēnā koe my bro.
Kia ora, Cyril. I just want to say to Tautoko Radio and the whānau here, given the short notice, thanks so much for the opportunity, Cyril.
E paena. Hey, it's a big taki for us.
Definitely, and considering, but you know, if I can say, Cyril, it's not a surprising taki. It shouldn't be a surprising decision. It shouldn't be the first time that we've heard about this topic. But in saying that, as Joe has said, the topic is very, very broad. It's to do with medicinal, it's to do with our gardening practices, it's to do with our general everyday lifestyle, and how we carry on every day as a culture, if I can say that.
Tēnā koe hoi, you've actually been working with kaupapa similar to this. You're part of a national organisation that looks at the introduction of various things, including this type of thing, into Aotaeroa. So what's your thoughts around this take as a take that for te ao Māori?
Kia ora, Cyril, and you're right, as Joe said, we met him at a national network hui in Auckland with the Environmental Protection Authority, and technicians from throughout the country attended that hui, including Auntie Emma, if I could say that. Now, in regards to hazardous substances and new organisms that we've advocated over the time, just to put out there to the people that in the very near future, this kind of technology has just been, let's say, discovered, and there are a lot of issues around it for us as tangata whenua on how we're going to deal with it. Or if I can say, just to provoke some inspiration, are we even going to consider doing it or let it happen?
Now, they do say that in our whakapapa, genetic engineering is a new thing. It's not a new thing.
No, I'm an advocate of that. We have in our culture, in relation to humans, we have an event called a tomo, and in that event, it's been, Western world has convinced us that that's just a relationship to stop us fighting with one another. But in my opinion, when you add influence of maramataka and some wisdom of our elders, there was more to it than that. Maramataka wasn't just used for good days for fishing and good days for growing kumara and those kinds of things. It was very, very... and there's evidence of that. One of the elders earlier at our hui this morning advocated that one of his elders from Kaikohe had shown him a maramataka and it used symbols that aren't understood today, like maramataka today. We use English words to give us an explanation of it, but this was a lot older than that, and it was using the similar, from his explanation, similar symbols that are used in Egypt.
So it's a very different worldview than the worldview we know as maybe the colonised minds.
Yes, definitely, and this coming event, in my opinion, is global changing, if I can say it like that. Nothing to get anxious about, but if I can go to the Taha Māori world, we did things that created global change as well, in our using our whakapapa and with our tupuna and those kinds of things.
One of the possibilities of this particular kaupapa is that the national government, the previous government, wanted to get rid of all pests by 2050, and this may be an opportunity by using this type of what is it called, the potential of this genetic engineering. We can do that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Firstly, given that Waitangi Days just happened, Cyril, all the excitement of the elections process on what this current government has said to us, it's starting to expose the twist. They also advocated things about the TPPA, they also advocated things about a lot of different things. It was advocated nicely, it was advocated in a maternal way, and we found excitement in that. Now we're getting the interpretation of those advocates that were advocated by the Labour Party today. And if I can say, this government currently understood this kind of technology. It had already been created. So, and they didn't tell us that. Or more to the point, we didn't ask the question, how are you going to do that, create this pest-free environment in 2050? And in a nutshell, just for the sake of explanation, they should have said similarly to what the Americans did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We're just going to drop a bomb on everything and we're just going to obliterate the whole territory and we're going to settle it because that recovered.
Yes.
But in saying that, I don't think we should be fearful of inputting, Cyril, and consistently we've advocated that in the delivery of the hui that we went to, we're faced with choosing from an option. I personally think we should stop doing that. We should be sitting down and having hui to make decisions, not choosing from options that we face.
Well, it's normally a reaction rather than a proactive stance we're making.
Yes, and that's the situation we're in right now. A lot of our elders, as some of us may be aware, never got excited about those particular formats on how huis were held.
Yes.
They didn't fall in line and say, oh, we're going to choose A or B, no, we're not going to do that. They produced a solution to the problem, and that's what I'm talking about doing.
And I suppose the thing about this, I mean, where's it going to end? I mean, we might talk about this as a way of getting rid of the pests, but I mean, the long-term ramifications of this type of thing, and the, for example, us as tangata whenua, the effect on us not only as tangata whenua, but also the worldview that we have in regards to Papa Tuanuku, Mother Earth, Father Sky, and all those things that are important, that fulfill our obligations to our role as kaitaki or guardians of Papa Tuanuku.
Yeah, kia ora, Cyril. There have been many events, let's go back as far as the 70s, where technologies changed and we were faced with it. Even the 60s, the black and white TV created different things and impacts on that. And if I can say, we've become complacent. And I say that kindly. We've become complacent in this new technology that's emerging. If I can, this type of technology has the ability to change our way of life significantly. Meaning at the moment they're saying pest-free by 2050, but there's this tool that they use to manipulate our DNA. For an example, what was advocated at the hui, Cyril, was they were able to consider, with our consent, changing the possum's habitat or lifestyle by manipulating it so that it couldn't breed anymore, and that was a way of getting full eradication. So we needed to consider, if they can do that to that, then the same tool can be used on other animals, can be used on other people, you know, and we're conscious of this kind of psyche that's here, and exactly, and in the resource management world they call it exacerbate. So they get a consent to build a toilet, and the next minute on the exacerbation they build a subdivision, but the consent was given for the toilet. So that's what I'm throwing the caution out there. And one more caution I'm throwing out there, Cyril, is, and we brought this, you know, I'm bringing this up, the tools that they have in their kit to create this technology, that needs to be looked at too. What's this technology? What are the tools that they're using? Because that's changing as well. You know, and the kind of power sources that are needed, and the kind of materials that are needed to make the tools to put in the laboratory. At the moment, they've got tools there to create sterile possums. What are the tools that are going to be needed to create sterile humans?
And I mean, that's a big issue. I mean, they're talking about the depopulation of the human being. They're saying there's way too many human beings on Earth, and we need to look at a strategy for the depopulation of human beings.
Yeah, and you know, the indication that this is global is where these guys are travelling and who they're talking to. It's a global issue, the entire globe. Whether we're going to be isolated by not knowing what our other indigenous cultures around the planet are saying on this matter, that's not hard to find out what they're saying, given that we have technology like Google and those kinds of things, and also communication. We know some of our whānau are spread around the world, and having this discussion with them. But I do believe, you know, just to try and find a parallel, we're talking about our tohungatanga. There's the vehicle that we need to discuss this kind of thing, because this is the tohunga world. Manipulation, DNA, direct communication with our atua. How do they feel about it? Our atua, so to speak.
Yeah, tika te kōrero. Moving on, Bryce, where to from here? I mean, you're part of a national organisation that goes through a so-called consultation process with the treaty partner. I mean, what are your views, and how has this worked for you as far as being able to have the true, a real say into the decisions of what happens, particularly with this take?
Right. If my personal view on how we have a say and how we do things, that was handed down to me. That's you know, literally how you get your point across and how you have a say is you stand up and say it. And there's not enough people doing that, Cyril, in this environment. There's not enough people, you know, don't send Bryce off, for an example, as a representative of you, because I can't advocate on your behalf. How things are working now, if we go into our taha Māori world, then we find a way on how we can deliver our point and get our view considered. Considered strongly where it can implement change within there. Using the view of the Western world, because that's a status quo position, no. You know, that's the view of, would you want this or not, yes or no? No, well, they're going to go ahead and do it anyway. So, you know, if I can just make that point a little bit more sincere, if we stand up and say this, not aggressively, you know, using our point of view, using our taha Māori world. I'm a strong advocate of our taha Māori world, because in there, you'll see this kind of DNA sequencing, you'll see this kind of technology already existed and has done for millions and millions of years.
Tēnā koe, Bryce, you're thinking about the importance of this take being not only good information getting out to our whānau, but also being able to discuss this to move forward, to look at what our view from Te Ao Māori would be. How do you think that can happen?
Well, in a nutshell, for an example, this sterilising the possum, is that in our taha Māori world, complete eradication? I haven't seen that. You know, when my waka came here, I'll say it like that, mā tātua, we were told to hop on it and hit the road. There were ways, they found ways of doing that. So if we were to input into the eradication of possum, because it is having an impact on our native species here in Aotaeroa, it is having an impact. And the other option is either do this or drop a bomb like they did in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So one of the considerations with being brave is to try to encourage the system to, and this was mentioned again this morning, where if we were to be able to genetically engineer these pests, and for an example, a kiore and a rat. The kiore has benefits to us. We ate them and they were clean and those kinds of things. So instead of genetically eradicating the rat, maybe we could use it, or even the possum, and teach it or engineer it not to eat our native species, not to attack our birds, to eat maybe tobacco weed or the giant reed or gorse or those kinds of things. Now, as unreal as that may sound, the technology is already there to do it.
Tēnā koe, Bryce. Look, we've got our whanau Eva with us as well. Eva, ngami kia koe e te tuini, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe.
Okay, what's your whakaaro on this?
When it comes to our whakapapa to change it on anything, we don't have that right. And when it comes to the atua, it's our obligation to help them, because at this time we know that Unnatural is really upset, you know, and we know that what they're doing in Tangaroa is causing problems. So when they talk the exclusive economic zone, that's our responsibility as New Zealanders. When you look at it, for us, for our people, we have a connection to Moana Nui Kiwa, and they show me a map that says, oh, it's only within this area, so there's no other Pacific Islands there. But when I look at the map properly, I can see the migration of the whale to Tonga. So if we allow changes here, it will affect Moana Nui Kiwa. There's no way, and we have obligations to other people. So if the world looks at us, that it started from here, we won't have a good face out there, you know. I have real concerns, especially with the GMO and the scientists, because I listen to them speak, and the money is coming from the American military. You know, Rutherford split the atom. He did it for purely medical reasons and everything like that. But they changed the colour of it and it harmed. So as a people, why would we consent to something that they can't contain? So their answer to that was they're going to change the DNA. So they're going to change the whakapapa. They're going to use the earthworm. Why use the earthworm? It's not doing any harm to our land. You know, so that's what they're saying. They're going to contain it, but if there's a mistake, they've got an antidote and they'll make the DNA back to the way that it was, but it can't be done. You know, once you change something, it's changed. To try and make it the same, there will still be a hair.
Tēnā koe te tuhine is for probably most people, it's all about getting rid of the possum. I mean, if anything that gets rid of the possum must be a good thing, and I mean, that's the populist thing, that's the way they work on populations of people. They pick on something that we can all feel a passion for,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
it doesn't matter how we do it, ko te mea nui kōrero hoki ngā possums.
So they say. But at the end of the day, who's going to benefit from it? Because the scientist said at the end of the day, he can't control what happens to it, his findings, because he is answerable to the people that gave him the money. So there's no guarantee to us as people, especially if they want to test it here on our land. You know, there's no guarantee to us that there won't be any adverse effects. There's none.
And at this stage, I mean, they seem to have targeted Aotaeroa as a place to do the trials and perhaps look at the commitment from the government that they want to get rid of possums by 2050. I mean, that seems to be a big enough reason for them to actually come to Aotaeroa. I always say we like our sheep, we love to follow, and perhaps, you know, we're maybe more vulnerable than other countries.
It's because we're a small country and they can contain it, but it's big enough to be able to have to monitor the results. You know, because if you have it in America, it's too big to contain, whereas our country is only small. You know, so it can be contained to that area. And we've seen it on those scary movies that they have, those scientific movies that they have. You know.
Tēnā koe te whananga, Bryce, we're almost ready to wind up the program. Gee, half an hour's almost gone. But hey, thanks for coming today, and final word from you about this important take.
Kia ora, Cyril, and thanks for that. It's just, again, like all of these take, Cyril, I advocate, look at your taha Māori world. There's things in there that are relevant and parallel to what's coming in the future. Yeah, and that's about a conclusion for me, Cyril. Go into your taha Māori world, and in there you'll find a lot of comfort, a lot of answers, and outcomes. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Bryce, ka mihi kia koe. Hoi rā te whāra ko te reo tēnei mai whananga nei Bryce Smith, me iwa. E korona rāwe pāra ki tēnei take tina nui ratu mo tātou mo te ao Māori. We've also had Joe Eggender from America. They're filming this as we're doing this, and of course looking at genetic engineering, and specifically following in New Zealand is the potential to use what they call the gene drive for the eradication of pests, that's possum, in 2050. Hoi rā ka mihi kia koe, Bryce. Kia kouta e te whānau me te wai whakanei, o wai ta tautoko te kororei, e tiwi Māori kia tū, kia rangatira.
Kia ora.
Choice vote. Thank you. Ka wai.